Performance Growth, Maximum Growth Performance Webinar Series launched by Maximum Acceleration. My name is Erik, Janeczko, Head Coach and CEO with Maximum Acceleration, and it's my privilege and honor to be able to join you for this program today and introduce you to a little bit about what we have the honor of working you through if you come out to the NAMB National Conference in Las Vegas here October 19th through 21st. Coming up just a little over 2 weeks. You still have some time to get those low, 14-day advance airfare rates. So you still have plenty of time to make the decision today to come on out to the program. And I wanted to kind of give you an introduction to what we have the opportunity to do out at the NAMB National Conference. Of course, our company, we've been doing professional development, coaching, and training for loan officers since 2005. And have worked through a process that we've developed for you that we'll introduce you to a little bit later in the call. But I wanted you to get a sneak preview of some of the great information that you're going to be able to get if you go ahead and come out to the program. So today's program is provided by one of our guest speaker and keynote address provider at the NAMB National Conference, Mr. Rene Rodriguez. And of course, Rene is a good friend and colleague of mine. He's my personal mentoring coach for many, many years. I consider him to be a really true friend, and he's Rene's experience and background is not only in mortgage and in professional sales and selling skills, but also a student of neural science and an expert at brain mechanics and biophysiology and how it influences what we do and how we do it and how to do it at a higher level in a shorter period of time. He's an amazing presenter, and he's got some incredible things to share with you today. Today's session is really focused on selling during hard times, 6 tips to stay on top. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to my friend and colleague, Rene, and let him take it and run with it for today.
Fantastic. Now, are you handing me the screen as well?
I will be flipping it over to you as you get started here momentarily.
Great. Wait for that to come across. And here we go. All right. I'm assuming everybody can see my screen now. Can you see it?
Yep.
Perfect. Well, Erik, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you everybody for making the time out of your busy days to be a part of this today. To talk about professional selling is honestly to talk about what is truly one of my favorite subjects to talk about. Growing up, I was a fanatic of playing basketball. 15 years of my life holding a basketball in my hand, and only to come to my second year in college to get cut from the basketball team was one of the most devastating things that ever happened to me. And I remember being there and talking to, I got a chance to talk to an executive from a very, very large company, and he was asking me about my career. I was 18 years old, and I cut him off, and I said, let me ask you one question, sir. And I said, if I want to be in your position when I get older, what's the one thing that I need to learn now? I have more discipline and desire than I know what to do with, but I got cut from my team, and I have nowhere to point this energy. And he looked at me, and he smiled. This is a CEO of a $25 billion company. And he looked at me and smiled, and he said, Rene, he said, you learn how to sell. If you learn how to sell, you'll always be employed. Now, at 18 years old, you don't really ask questions when somebody like that tells you to do something like that. But to make a very long story short, it truly was one of the most life-changing decisions, pieces of advice that was ever given to me. About 2 weeks after that meeting, I get a phone call, or excuse me, I get a letter in the mail saying I've been selected because of my GPA to join this fast-paced sales and marketing company in the sales or in the health and wellness industry. Now, at the time, I had a 2.7 GPA, and so I figured, hey, somehow I snuck under the radar, but I'm going to take advantage of this. And the opportunity was actually to sell cookware door-to-door for a company named Salad Master. By far the greatest experience of my life, and since then I've had some really fun opportunities to work with some of the largest companies in the world, some of the most powerful individuals in the world, and really see behind the scenes of how things work. And the thing that it always comes back to is that business does not happen until something is sold. And what I'm going to be sharing with you here is just sort of a sneak peek in terms of some of the elements that we're going to be covering at the NAMB National event here coming up in the 19th of October. So when we think about selling, one of the biggest challenges that I want us all to think about is what is our job description? What is that thing that we're asked to do? And one of the biggest mistakes that I see is that the job description, as we hear it from most managers, is your job is to go and close deals. Now I want you to ask yourself, what is fundamentally wrong with just that as a job description? Why isn't that suffice? And also, why is it that we've all heard that before? The challenge with that is closing deals is an end result. It's not a job. It's something that is a byproduct of effort. It's something that happens as a result of certain things that we do. So the challenge with that is not job description. There's a bridge that's missing from the end result and actually how we get there. And so for me, one of the most important things to understand as we enter this world of selling is to understand what we call the difference between an order taker and a sales professional. These are two very distinct philosophies. They're two very distinct behavior sets, and they're two very distinct, I would say, incomes at the end of the day. And so an order taker is somebody I define in the red area. So this is, I kind of want to brand the red in terms of order taker, somebody that I define as somebody who facilitates a transaction that would have happened anyways. And so another way to call an order taker is a vending machine. I think we've all seen vending machines. Vending machines have a product or service to sell, but they stand there. They don't, if you're walking by one, they don't stop you and say, hey, by the way, you're looking kind of thirsty. And they don't sell you anything. They stand there and are available if for some reason you decide that you want to buy something. They will facilitate that transaction. And sadly, too many people in our industry have become order takers in that sense of what happens when interest rates get low, we are forced to really abandon a lot of the salesmanship, the things that we've learned, and into how do we capture as much of this business as possible. The big challenge is that when interest rates get high and start to go up, order takers or vending machines get very, very lonely. And so it's one of those visuals I want to put in your mind of even the best of us can fall into this red area of becoming this order taker. So a sales professional, I want to give you a very different definition. A sales professional is somebody who creates sales by uncovering unseen value. They create sales, but their job is to uncover value that's not seen by that person. It's a very, very different skill set. And so when we hear this, there's also what I call an order taker is classified as what I call an externally focused victim. They look at the external world, and in return, they are a victim of circumstances happening to the external world. So you'll hear them say things like, the market is slow, therefore I'm not selling that much. Because the market is slow, that means that I'm not going to sell. The sales professional is very different. They're an internally focused proactive. They focus internally, and they figure out how can I do something about this situation. So they say things that sound more like, you know what, I need to make more phone calls and start asking for more deals. It's a very much more of taking responsibility for what's going on versus being a victim of what's happening. The victim is also going to say things like, you know, they need to give me better pricing. If I had better pricing, I'd sell more. The proactive, the professional, was going to say, you know what, I need to ask better questions and add more value. The victim is going to say, yeah, Rene, you know, I know how to overcome those objections. The proactive professional is going to say, wait, how did you overcome that? And they're going to pull out probably a voice recorder, and they're going to want to know exactly how it is that you said it, and they're going to go back and practice, because professional is never, ever done learning. So when I look at those two pieces, this is one of the things that drives me, because whether we're on the red side or the green side, any of us in the sales profession have fallen on both of these sides. We're never always just on the right. We're never just always on the left. If we are in this profession, we have both tendencies. And so from what I like to look at is asking myself, am I on the green side or the red side today? And when I find myself in a slump or complaining or frustrated, the behavior also has been following that I've been sort of on this left side sort of behavior and thinking and mentality. And so what we want to think about is we want to move ourselves over to this green side of how do we take responsibility? How do we see ourselves as people that uncover value that's unseen? So here's another visual that I want to give you in terms of how we look at this. And I like to classify our clients that we deal with in three different categories. You got on the far right, people that are sold. Now these people that are sold have already decided that there's value here, and they want to buy from you. Now there's not that many out there. Of course, when interest rates come down, the group of green smiley faces, of course, is a lot more. But in this category, you know, there's really not that many of them. And the skill set down here is you have to be an order taker to be able to take advantage of that. Now, the interested category, where there's clear value identified, there's a few more people, but not that many more. Now, I'll take somebody with some natural skill and that is willing to hustle, and we will go out and just ask the right question, and we'll pull them over this dotted line to have them be sold. The challenge is, and the most exciting place I like to play, is over here in this area where people are not interested, where there's no clear value or need identified yet. These people, you know, they're the red frowny faces. Now, what I love about this is that there's endless opportunity. I always tell people that you will never run out of people that have absolutely no interest in hearing what it is that you have to say. The challenge is can you find a way to move past those barriers and uncover value that they have not seen? What's also most exciting about this is that value or satisfaction in a transaction usually is directly correlated to the opposite of what they saw in the beginning. What I mean by that is if you help somebody who's already sold transact what they were looking for, they're happy. That's good. Hey, thanks. I was already sold. I got it already. Thanks for doing it. I needed it. I need you out of my life. See you later. But somebody who did not see the value that you offered, and you found a way to communicate that, and they saw what you were offering, and their life, their business, their family, something was better as a result of what you uncovered. Think about the effect and the impact that you just had on that person's life. This isn't just a transaction anymore. You've become a necessary part of their life in some way, shape, or form. You have cared enough about them to communicate in a way that offered value. This is where the referrals come from. This is where price does not become an option or an objection, where people don't even ask. This is the area that you will never, ever run out of opportunity. And this is what I like to classify as the world of the sales professional. So if I were to ask people the cookware that I started selling, I just want to ask as a general, you don't have to answer it out loud, obviously, but how many people here on this call would like to buy a $2,500 set of cookware? And my guess is, because I've asked this to tens of thousands of people, that no one's ever raised their hand saying, hey, I'd like to do that. And so the reason is, and the reason I bring that up is because if I were to look at from an order taker mentality, I'd say, wow, I just got some market research, and nobody wants to buy my product, therefore I'm not selling. But for some reason, I had a 98% close ratio my last summer in this business. And what that meant was that I already knew that people weren't interested, and they were not interested based on the information that they had. They didn't have my information. They didn't have my presentation. They didn't have the value propositions and the features and benefits that I was, and the stories that I was going to be telling, and the emotional experience. So when we look at this, especially in a changing market, as interest rates at some point are going to go back up, and they're starting to creep back up there, but we're still in a great environment, that we're starting to compete against other loan officers, maybe going after other realtor business as we start to improve our purchase business where realtors may have felt ignored during this whole refi boom again. Whatever challenges that you come up with where those people don't see the value in what you do, this is your opportunity to shine as that sales professional. And of course, there's an endless supply of money there as well. It's the best place to find opportunity. Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coach has a great example of what he calls the ceiling of complexity, where I think we've all had it, where we've gone out there, we've made a goal, but we seem to bump our heads up against this wall. And a lot of times I think people make the mistake of saying when we bump our head against this wall that must be the ceiling of my potential. But he likes to frame it a very different way. He says this is a ceiling of complexity. What that means to me is that somebody has figured out the solution. Somebody's figured out the formula to be able to get past the ceiling of complexity. And once you do, life seems a lot better. We move past that, only to find that next ceiling of complexity. But maybe we've moved now from five loans a month. We finally cracked that one, and now we're at 10 loans a month. We're saying, gosh, we've got all new sorts of challenges that we have to face, new opportunities, and new, in essence, complexities that we've got to figure out. Of course, once at some point we figure that out, only to find the next one. But that is part of our journey, is to continually find those methodologies and those secrets. This is why I love working with Erik and his team, because this is what they do on a daily basis. So let's define some terms, because I really want to get into giving you a framework for how we like to think of sales process and what it is that it really takes to sell during difficult, challenging, competitive times. I think it was Socrates who said the beginning of wisdom begins with the definition of terms. So we'll define real simply here what a sales activity is. A sales activity is something that we control. It's not something that happens to you. It's very proactive. So if I receive a phone call, it's not a sales activity. But if I make a phone call, that is a sales activity. And if you haven't figured it out by now, everything that I talk about is about taking full responsibility over this. If I were to ask every one of you, I could see your hands, how many people on this phone call would classify themselves as somewhat controlling. And of course, usually people giggle at that. I'm not saying that you're a controlling person, but you would value control. And the reason why you value control is because the majority of these people, of all of us on this phone call, do not get a salary. And what that tells me, number one, is that we're kindred spirits. We have all been asked to believe in something and to go out there and tell the world about this thing that we believe, and also be told that most people are going to say no to us, And then we also say, hey, we're going to believe in this thing. Don't pay me until I sell something. And we're going to get rejected most of the time. Is it any wonder that we all gravitate towards personal development, towards learning new skills and coping methods? And so when we look at this, these sales activities are what make us the professionals that we are. We have traded our secure income for an increased level of control. You want to give up control, and you want an income or a salary, then the biggest thing you have to give up is control. You have to show up at a certain time, do certain things, and follow certain activities that may or may not be what you like to do. We've all chosen for more control in exchange for no salary and an income. That makes us all kindred spirits in understanding this process here of something that we control. The next one is something that I really want us all to really understand, is this concept of commitment objective. One of the two most powerful words you'll ever run across. So a sales activity is something we control, but every sales activity has what we call a commitment objective. And I'll read this to you, but I want you to read along with me here. It's the commitment objective, or the CO, is the goal of each selling activity that requires the client to make a commitment to agree to take some action that will let you both move to the next step in the process. Now, so it's a mouthful there, but I want you to think about this, is that each sales activity, here's another visual I want to give you. Of course, the thing you have to remember is that commitment objectives change from activity to activity. So a lead is something, it's either a potential client or potential referral source that expresses interest in doing business with you. So let me give you a visual. We've got a lead has steps that we have to follow. Maybe there's 6 steps to get to close. Now those are 6 activities that we have to engage in. In between step 1 and 2, we're going to have a commitment objective. Maybe it's commitment objective A, B, C, D, and so on. What I have found most often is that people don't confuse sales activity. Even though most people cannot define or articulate their sales process, but most people confuse their objective for that activity. I hear things all the time that say, I say, well, you're going to this networking event. What's your commitment objective? Well, they say, well, it's a meet and greet. Let me tell you, in sales, there's no such thing as a meet and greet. There is a meeting to achieve an objective, and that's it. A lot of times people try to sell too early or try to close the deal too early when their only objective was just to get a phone call date and time, or just to get an agreement to meet with somebody else, or just to get them to send you a document of some sort. And so we have to understand these commitment objectives. So as we look at this, let's take a look at the defined sales process versus the undefined sales process. We have 2 different people here. You have person in red, and this person, let me just kind of give you their profile. They love their clients. I mean, they love customer service. They are committed to their clients. And, I mean, they're so committed to customer service that they will even take their dry cleaning out for their realtors and do all sorts of things that are way above and beyond this process. Now, the other side, they also find themselves, and you hear them say often, that they are very, very busy, very, very, very busy. And, they do their best to try to return phone calls, but for some reason they have a very hard time returning phone calls. They seem to miss a lot of their child sporting events, because, hey, they got to take care of their customer, because if they don't take care of them, somebody else will. So now, look at the person in blue. This person also loves their customers. Customer service is very important to them. But they don't think that a phone call back is all that important, not all that big of a deal, because they think, why wouldn't I call somebody back? That's part of the normal process. They show up to all their kids' basketball games and football games and soccer games, and their customers are very, very happy. But what is the big difference between these 2 people? I want you just to think for a couple seconds here. What's the big difference? And I'll show you. 1 sale, 2 sales, 3 sales, 4 sales, 5 sales to the other's 1 sale. All this comes down to is a visual representation of the efficiencies that are created when we are clear, number 1, on our sales process and our sales activities, and 2, on the objective of each one of those activities. That's the big missing piece. Because if you're out there, once it clicks for you, and you realize that what an objective, a commitment objective is, your whole body will rebel against the feeling of you not being on target or not being on objective. It is one of the most powerful things that can happen in our sales process. And from a number standpoint, when you identify your commitment objectives in sales process, you get a 25% reduction in sales cycle time. That is an extra 3 months of selling or sales without having to spend the 3 months. A lot of times I hear people complain that wish there were more hours in the day, more months in the year. Well, this is the way to do that, by becoming more efficient. So what does that sales process look like? I like to break it down in what we call the 6 money-making activities. Now, before we go into that, Erik, why don't we take just a quick stop here and go into the Q&A piece that you had, because I think there may be some questions that came up, and then we can go finish it off with the 6 activities.
Right, definitely. Okay, so guys, the first question that came through, Rene, is let's see, it's posted by Michael here. Ask the question, okay, so what are some of the, I think you're probably going to cover this in just a little bit, but what are the basic commitment objectives of those first, for example, meet and greet? How do you communicate that? What are some of the steps that you teach to be able to make that networking event turn into something that leads down the path towards a committed realtor actually setting business?
Absolutely, and that question is going to be answered in detail on this next slide. So if maybe we pause that question, because I'm going to answer it. If you see the 6 money-making activities, these next 2 slides are going to answer that specifically. So if it's okay, let's pause that question and go on to the next one that maybe has to relate to the previous slides.
Okay. Well, while I'm waiting for the folks to go ahead and post a couple of additional questions here, let me just share with you one quick thing. The reason that I'm having Rene do this webinar and the reason that our team is going to be getting together is, guys, you're going to have the opportunity to experience some of the best presenters, some of the greatest thought leaders in the industry are going to be out at this NAMB National Conference. We have done an extensive amount of work on behalf of the association to put together an incredible agenda that I know is going to give you the ideas, thoughts, and guidance that you're going to need to be able to really power up your business. Presenters like Rene, who's, I'm salivating waiting for the next step here. I don't want to take too long on this, but, Rene, Greg Frost, our coaching team, we're all getting together at the end of the day on Monday, the last part of the event. The whole event is going to be leading up to filling you with a bunch of ideas and strategies. And then our job at the end of the event is, with Rene's help, being our closing keynote speaker, is to help you pull all those ideas into a specific plan of action that we're going to help you build. It's going to walk you through step by step how to power up your purchase business in 2014. And as we do that, we are going to be making sure that, and then once we've helped you put your action plan together, then Rene is going to be sharing with you how to make sure that that action plan sticks throughout the year. Of course, looking at this, you know what, Rene, there's a couple other questions that have come in, but I'm going to go ahead and let's just keep on going with the program here at this point, and then go ahead, and then we'll take another round of questions a little bit closer to the end. Guys, as you go ahead and think of these questions, go ahead and continue to post them as we go through the program today. Go ahead and keep continuing to post those questions into the Q&A, and then we'll take another break at the very end to go ahead and address a few more questions.
Perfect. Okay, so I mean, the perfect question, of course, is, what are these activities? What are these commitment objectives? So let's get clear on the activities first. Maybe the activities are the things that we do. They're not the things that happen to us. And my first sales lesson when I got into cookware sales was, they told me, said, Rene, there's only 6 ways to make money in selling, and anything else that you do is a complete waste of time. So there's only 6 ways that you make money. So now, these are not profound. I'm going to warn you right now, but I also believe that the most profound things in life are also the simplest, the ones that we overlook, the ones that we say, yeah, I got that. What else is new? Give me something new and fresh. And we yet so often forget to just really keep track of those fundamental behaviors. These are what we call dependent events, the things that no matter what happens, we have to engage in them. I like to use the analogy of, let's say somebody wants to lose weight, and they go and they hire a trainer, and the trainer says, well, we need to get you to work out X amount of times. We need to get you to eat X amount of calories, consume this amount of calories, make sure there's a deficit. And they give you a plan, and you go ahead and you lose the weight. And after a year or 2 later, you gain the weight back, and then you go back to the trainer. And the trainer says, and you say, well, I want to do something that's new and fresh. Well, we're going to have to get you to work out 6 or 8 times and do this and that. And they say, yeah, I already did that before. I already got that. What's next? Well, you really can't avoid those fundamentals, and it goes the same with these activities. So the first one is, of course, is prospecting. Prospecting is the act of looking for leads. This is very, very simple. We prospected in cookware by working trade shows, and we measured our results with a ruler. How high was the stack of leads? There are so many different ways to generate leads in the mortgage industry, working with real estate partners. A lot of people do web leads. There's all sorts of ways that we generate leads. The next one, of course, is setting appointments. I'm going to go through these, and then I want to tie them to the commitment objective. Setting appointments is the next one. Then it's presenting value. Of course, now I'm with them. What am I telling them? What value proposition am I offering? Most people in this industry don't even have a presentation, which is sad. Then, of course, gaining commitment or closing, getting the application signed, getting an appraisal check. Then it's aftercare and follow-up. They've bought into your idea. Now you have to keep the promise. And, of course, getting referrals. So let's take these 6 here, activities, and I want to put them next to the result or the commitment objective. So here goes the answer to that question. So, of course, and try to quiz yourself for a minute. What's that activity? What's that first sales activity? If you remember, it is prospecting. So now the question is, what is the result of prospecting? What's the commitment objective that you're looking for? And it's not about how many relationships you've built. It's not about how many great conversations you've had. It is about specifically how many leads you have generated. That is a number. Of course, and the lead is calculated by you have somebody who's expressed interest in some way, shape, or form in doing business with you. So now the activity is what you do. The result is what you get. So, of course, now follow this process. You've prospected. You generated a lead. What do you do with it? Of course, money-making activity number 2, which is you set an appointment. Now, that requires a tool that not every salesperson likes, which is a phone. It also requires us to pick up that phone and call people, and most often get rejected. Now, if we've got referrals and hot, warmer leads, hey, more power to you. I think that's fantastic. Not everybody has that privilege, or not everybody has that luxury. So we set an appointment. Now, how do we know we've been successful, or what's our commitment objective to setting appointments? Don't overthink it here. You're on the phone, and you hang up that phone. How do you know that you've been successful? It's very simple. You have 3 things. You have a date, you have a time, and a place for you guys to meet. Right? Like I said, not profound, but yet absolutely necessary. I can't tell you how many times people say, you know what, Rene, no, I got these first 2. Let's get on to the real fun stuff. Let's get on to closing. And I can't tell you how many times we've gotten on the phone and people get on the phone call and they say, hey, Sally, I just wanted to see, if you were still interested in meeting. Of course, first mistake was not being assumptive. But then they say, well, you're going to be out of town for 2 weeks? Oh, okay, great. I'll give you a call in a couple of weeks, and we'll see if we can't find a time. Then they hang up the phone. And, of course, what happens there? They're now postponing this objective for 2 more weeks, where over those 2 weeks, the emotion about wanting to get down or wanting to get together now starts to diminish. By the time you maybe get a hold of them in 2 weeks, they're probably busy, and you get another week, so you're 3 weeks out to another appointment that's 2 weeks out from there. You're 5 weeks out. I've had people pick up the phone and call them right back and say, you didn't reach an objective, so call them back. What do they say? Something very simple. Say, hey, Sally, you know what? I'm just realizing my calendar's filling up pretty fast. Why don't we just throw a time on the calendar now, and then if something happens, you can let me know. But let's just at least get something on the calendar. And most often people will say, yeah, no problem, and they get something on there. We just haven't asked. So you prospected, you got a lead, set an appointment, you got a date, time, and a place. Now what do you do with that? Here's the time where you present value. This is where people most of the time wing it. They just show up, and they say, I'm just building a relationship. This is all family. But they didn't sequentially walk them through any value proposition, any way of differentiating themselves, any way of showing that they're credible, and really no structured methodology to create trust. It all happens through winging it. Every sales professional that I know, every person that I know is successful, has a structured presentation in 3 forms. Of course, they have a PowerPoint, but they have also a perspective, something very simple that they can walk through. But the most powerful one, and I would challenge everybody to have, is the presentation that can happen on a napkin. Can you distill your value proposition, what makes you unique, what makes you different on a napkin? What's so powerful about a napkin is that it creates no resistance. If you're sitting at a table at dinner and somebody asks what you do and you pull out your computer or your iPod or iPad and start presenting something, resistance goes up. Even if you start pulling out a prospectus, resistance goes up. But if you just pull a napkin and start drawing a picture, it increases curiosity, which is exactly what we want to do in the sales process. So once we're credible, we've differentiated ourselves, and we gain trust, now it becomes very simple to gain commitment. People say, well, Rene, show us some of those really cool closes you have. And I say, well, hold on a second. If you're worried about the close, that means we need to work on your presentation. Because I guarantee you, if you're not credible, you're the same as everyone else, you haven't differentiated, and they don't trust you, I don't care how good your close is, it's not going to work. So we have to really make sure that presentation is solid. So what's the objective for gaining commitment? It's very simple. We want a signature skin in the game, specifically in your business. I'm hoping you're collecting appraisal checks, something that really exchanges money as quickly as possible. Research shows that the sooner monetary value is exchanged in a relationship, the larger the deal and the more likely it is to actually close. And so the sooner you get that appraisal check and the commitment on their part, the more likely it is that good things will happen. So once you have your signature there, it's the aftercare and follow-up. There's so many opportunities here to just really shine. I mean, this industry is just ripe for people to stand out. I can't tell you how many times I say, well, why do you like them? Well, they actually call me back. And the next thing that goes through my mind is how did the bar get set so low that a phone call back now is differentiating? And so I look at that as what an opportunity for us to have some simple things in place to do and conduct the aftercare. Maybe it's just a handwritten thank you card. Maybe it's as simple as noticing that the client during their application was feeding their child Ritz crackers, and as part of the closing, that a Costco-sized Ritz cracker box shows up at their doorstep and says, I hope the first few days we remove are a little less stressful. Those kinds of things create the objective of raving fans and the wow experiences. And so when we look at that, we prospect to get a lead, we set appointments to get a date, time, and a place, we present value to be credible, differentiate, and gain trust, then we close the deal so we get a signature, and now we take care of them afterwards, really fulfill the promise to create those wow experiences. So now the referral becomes very, very, very easy to get. And of course, once we have that referral, we go right back up to setting appointments, and we follow the process again. So as we go through that, you see that this becomes a very perpetual sales process, and when you have this structure in place, you can then sit down and really build upon it. How do you make the process for setting appointments better? How do you improve your lead generation model? How do you improve that presentation of value to really capture what it is that you're talking about? How do you make sure that presentation of value reflects on your website, on your business card? How do you get better at gaining commitment and making that process very seamless for the client? What can you do from an aftercare standpoint? There's all sorts of technologies out there that allow you to follow up. And of course, are you even asking for referrals? What they say is that the most powerful time to ask for referrals during the process, not afterwards, because you still have something that they need, so they are more prevalent and more willing and able to give you a referral during that time. So I like to look at this as that your job is you are managers of many incremental commitments. You're not trying to move mountains in each call. You're just managing those little incremental commitments that have to move you from that one activity to the next, so that over time you are closing all those deals effortlessly. So what I like to call the CO mindset, or the commitment objective mindset, really is that you're moving from trying to get through to trying to get from. So that's a big thing. Instead of just, I'm going to get through this presentation, I'm going to get through the day, but you get through this meeting, but what am I trying to get from this? What objective am I trying to get from this meeting? It's a very different piece, and if you've got people that are there at the company, I would highly recommend that you somehow implement or ask people to hold you accountable anytime you go to a meeting to say, what is your CO? What is your commitment objective for this meeting? And how does it move you from where you are currently to your next step in the sales process? One of my favorite quotes, and where that came from, was Jim Rohn. He says, most people just try to get through the day, while sophisticated people learn how to get from the day. And you can apply that definitely to sales process. You can apply that to what's happening. But I'm going to stop here, move it back over to Erik, but I will end with this. We're definitely looking forward to seeing all of you in Las Vegas, and if you walk by me or see me there, I'm a big, tall guy with a goatee, so I should be pretty easy to spot. Stop me. Tell me what you thought. I'd love to hear your feedback. You can follow me if you're on Twitter at Rene, R-E-N-E-N-M-E. That's no more excuses, Rene, N-M-E, at Twitter, or it's actually on Facebook as well, at facebook.com/Rene, N-M-E. And I think Erik might have a slide for that as well. If not, we can email something out. But I want to thank you all for making the time, for spending the time with us here today. I know we probably have some more questions. I'll be on the phone call, and I'll hand it back over to Erik.
All right. Well, Rene, I'm going to preview one of the first couple of programs here. By the way, Rene, you're welcome to put into the chat field the contact information and that kind of stuff. I apologize with the short timing on this. I forgot to get your best contact information up into the webinar platform. So, Rene, if you want to go ahead and post that in as we're kind of going through these couple of questions, we'll make sure we get that information out to everybody. All right, so here's the thing. One of the first questions that came through while you were talking about the commitment objectives, John mentioned that he was interested in finding out a little bit more about the napkin presentation, about how he can go about creating a good napkin presentation. I know, Rene, from personal experience and what you've done for me before in workshops with our teams, as well as what we're going to be having you do again out at NAMB National. You go into that a little bit, but can you maybe give John a couple of quick tips that will help him get started before he comes out to the event?
Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Am
Yeah,
I back?
we can still hear you.
Okay. Yeah, in terms of the napkin presentation, it's the toughest part about anything that's simple, and I'll give you this analogy. Somebody says, Rene, what does it cost, for you to come in for, a 2-day presentation? It would be $15,000, let's say. And okay, well, how much for 45 minutes? Well, we'll say $25,000 for 45 minutes. And I say that to be facetious because it's harder to distill down a lot of concepts into a very simple format. But what I love about napkins is that if you were literally at a place and somebody said, tell me what it is that you do, what makes you different, and you had to draw a picture, what's the first thing that comes to mind? And a lot of times that's the starting point of what would you draw. And you have to be very clear on what is it that your company is, or use more specifically, what is it that makes you different? And then more importantly, what is it that matters? What matters to your client, the person that you're talking to? What is it about them? Is it about service? Is it about communication? Is it about marketing? And so you have to define, of those, what are your value propositions, and how do you very succinctly put those on a napkin to be able to draw a picture and have the right talking points. Now, I do a course where we create these different pieces. I'll let Erik talk more about that at some point. But you're welcome to send me an email at rene@volentum.com. I'll put all that stuff in the chat here as well. It definitely begins with making sure that you understand your value proposition and going through the exercise of how do you distill it down to a very simple picture that allows you just to talk. And remember, you're not trying to sell everything on that napkin. If you're at a napkin presentation, you're probably just selling the next meeting, or you're probably selling the next time where you can get into a more cohesive environment, a more conducive environment to actually close and sign documentation. So if you are doing the napkin, most likely it's about a very small objective to the next step. So make sure you identify that commitment objective, and then that picture fits alongside of it.
Absolutely. And Rene, I know you're going to be sharing a little bit more about that concept, and actually as part of the workshop that we're going to be doing Monday evening, you're going to be walking people through how to identify really a why, a personal reason, and motivation that's the center of that. Actually, I was going to ask you, Rene, would you mind sharing, the interview we did a couple of months ago for Lone Toolbox that was, I don't remember the name of the title exactly, but it was about centering on this particular issue of what personal motivations are and how to develop a personal value proposition. Would you mind if we sent that interview out to the folks that registered for today's webinar?
No, I'm fine.
Well, thank you.
Yep, no, I'm fine.
Okay, cool. Well, let me make a quick note of that. The other question that came through that I'd love to have you address is you mentioned referrals, asking for referrals during the transaction. Do you mind shedding a little light on what some of the maybe talking points of that might look like? What kind of conversation would lead to the commitment objective of gaining a couple of additional referrals?
I'm a big believer in preparing people to get referrals, and so instead of catching them off guard, but I always like to give a very good reason and a rationale and say that hey, this business requires a lot of my attention, and and if I'm talking to a business owner especially, I say as any business, it requires us to market and to sell. But to be honest, I said I really want to make sure that I pay special attention to all these transactions and all of the details and all the people that are touching things. So I give people a very important look into what it really takes to get a mortgage to come to life. And then at that point you can say, and if I do a really good job, one of the things, the best ways you can thank me is just by telling other people that you know. So as I'm going through this process, would it be okay if I asked you here and there about others that may be in the situation? Now, I also have to admit, and I'm still in the script here, I have to admit I'm extremely passionate about helping people, and we are in a very exciting time in our industry, and so I got to tell you that if I don't bring it up to people, I feel like I'm doing them a disservice, because I don't want people to look back at me 10 years from now and saying, why didn't you at least tell me that this opportunity existed right now? And so you have to personally get yourself in that place, I'm out of script now, in that place where you really feel confident and comfortable that you are truly doing people a service and would be doing them a disservice if you did not bring it up to them. I would highly recommend following Steve Harney and a lot of his articles. John Paulson, if you don't know who he is, you need to look him up, but he was the guy that shorted the market right before the subprime crisis happened, made somewhere along the lines of $4 billion. He is quoted as saying, if you right now is the best time. If you can buy a home, buy one. If you can buy two, buy two. If you can buy three, buy three. And then help your friends and family buy homes, because right now those who don't buy 10 years from now are going to regret it. If you can get yourself personally that personal conviction, then asking is as simple as saying, walking up to somebody who's in the desert, that's starving and thirsty, and saying, "Would you like a drink of water?" Because you come from that personal conviction. And if they said no, you'd point out and say, "Hey, you're thirsty. You haven't had anything to drink, and I don't want you to die." That simple conviction, if you really believed in what you were doing, you would have that same conviction around asking people for who else might be there. So now simple language is, there are a lot of people out there that are in a similar situation as you. And, if I were to ask you who comes to mind as somebody that may be in the need, in the same situation as you are right now, that question of who comes to mind, instead of saying, "Hey, can you think of anybody?" or "Can you give me 5 names?" or "Who comes to mind?" The more specific that you are around a certain scenario, the more people are willing to do that. The other thing about referrals, too, is the more specific you are about what your value proposition is, like your focus. If you're a first-time home buyer, then people are going to see first-time home buyers and think of you. That's a different question, but I think in general, I hope that answers it.
Yeah, I mean, that's an awesome job, Rene. There's a couple of things I'm going to go back and re-anchor that I heard Rene say in that are very powerful and very consistent with what we teach and coach our coaching clients on every single day. Is we talk about two key things that Rene said about the referrals. Is one, the service opportunity, finding the need and the commitment of what's there, and then the second element of it just being simple, powerful words like who instead of do. We often focus on when it comes to referrals, like for example, the other thing we go often is even flipping it around the psychology of it. If people are afraid to ask for the referrals, it's, overcoming the inertia and that fear of rejection or call reluctance that people often experience. It's think about it from this perspective, just like Rene said with that, giving water to a man who's thirsty kind of concept. The reality is, we're dealing with some of the best housing affordability literally in the last 220 years. There have only been 5 periods in the entire history of the United States that have had interest rates substantially below 5%. So yeah, property, housing prices and affordability have gone up a little bit with the interest rate increases, but it's still better than it's been most of the last 200 years. Unfortunately, there's a whole lot of folks out there who are completely oblivious to it. And the sad irony is most of people who could benefit the easiest are the least likely to be engaged because they're just to keep their head down and do what feels right kind of people that we need to be reaching out to and at least putting in front of them how affordable homes are right now, and then give them the opportunity to make a decision whether it's right for them or not. And if we're not doing that, if we know how affordable homes are right now, how guilty do we feel that we aren't doing everything in our power to share that message as efficiently and proactively as we can, and casting that net to as wide of an audience as possible? Okay, well, there's a couple of other great questions that have come in here. The first one that I want to address, and that's going to kind of transition us out, Rene, I'll send you the Q&A, and maybe you and I can tag team on getting a little bit more follow-up on a couple of these other really good questions. One of them might be, there's one from Simon in here that I think would even be best to respond to all with, is the name of a couple of folks that Steve Harney, and I think it's one of them that you mentioned, a couple of guys that you follow the blogs of that are talking about this Home Opportunity Initiative and all these kind of things right now. The question that I want to address first is how long is the seminar on Monday? The question asked by Isabel here. The reality is this program, and it's been on the agenda since day one, the program goes until about 6 o'clock on Monday evening. Now, part of the reason we orchestrated the program the way that we did is we wanted you to get, you're going to have, when you come out to the NAMB National event, there's over 27 independent breakout sessions, over 8 general session programs, 8 hours of general session programming. Great speakers like Greg Frost, and of course Rene is going to be our closing keynote speaker for the entire event. He goes on at 4:30 on Monday afternoon. The whole idea of this summit workshop is to take all those, suitcase full of notes of ideas that you're going to gather from the hours and hours and hours of training and content that are taking place the first 2 days of the event, and then before you leave, our team is going to walk you through a very simple but very easy to execute step-by-step implementation and planning process so that when you leave the event, you're leaving with everything you need to be able to implement a plan of action. And that's why we call it the Planning to Win Summit Workshop. Our goal is that we'll talk through kind of the high-level vision, what's in your mission, and helping Rene will help get you started down the path of creating that unique value proposition. Then we're going to go into talking about some of the vision of what you want to create in your business throughout 2014. Then we'll drill down into what are the things that are going to be in the way between where you are and what you want 2014 to look like. And then we'll talk about the specific problems and how to solve those specific problems. I'm also going to be bringing in a panel of top-performing loan originators that Rene and I are going to help facilitate. Also, Mr. Greg Frost is going to be joining us for that. You know, the industry's first billion-dollar originator, and you'll have an opportunity to sit down with the entire group and pick his brain on what he did to get to the point where he was doing, you know, 6+ loans a month. He did consistently to do over $1 billion in loan origination. Greg Frost did over 10,000 loans in 15 years in the early to mid 90s and 2000s. And that's how he became the industry's first billion-dollar originator. Well, we're going to go through a process of helping you identify the specific solutions to your unique challenges and problems that you're going to face in trying to get your business to a radically higher level throughout 2014. And of course, we'll put that all into a program that will allow you to walk away with a step-by-step action plan that you can execute throughout 2014. And then Rene will come back in and talk to you about how to create the emotional fuel that you'll need throughout the year to continue to drive that motivation. And then we'll also talk a little bit about how to create accountability. You know, Rene alluded to the idea of an accountability partner and the value and power of having that person in your organization. If you do have that person close to you that can literally walk by your office, knock on your door, and ask you what your commitment objective is before you head out to that networking event, that's great. But not everybody has that. Now, if you think about it, though, what is the power of accountability, and how powerful can it really be? I mean, think about the top performers in any industry, the Michael Jordans, the Wayne Gretzky's, the Tom Brady's of any world, professional sports, right? What did they all have in common? Well, the answer is they all had a coach or an accountability partner, somebody who cared as much about their own success, if not more so than they did. The person that would challenge them to work a little bit harder, stretch a little bit longer, do a couple extra push-ups, and to learn a little bit more. The person who guided them through that process and helped them recognize where they were off track and where they needed to make minute adjustments that would make all the difference in the world. Like, for example, when Rene shared earlier about asking who-based referral questions. Who do you know? You know, the human mind's pre-programmed to respond in very specific ways. If I ask a who question, your brain's going to tell you to give me a name. If I ask a do question, it's going to give me a yes or no response. More than likely, if you don't have anybody top of mind, you're going to tell me no. See, it's a coach who can see that from the outside perspective and give you that feedback and guidance on how to make the tweaks and adjustments. But the final piece of it is that person who's going to follow up with you on a specific date and time on whether you're meeting your objectives or not. If you do set a specific goal and action plan and ask somebody to hold you accountable to completing that action plan within a specific time frame, you have over a 95% chance of following through on those action ideas. So out at the NAMB National event, we'll talk a lot more about how to create accountability for you as a big part of that program. So the answer to the question is, and I know I'm vamping a little bit here, but the reality of the question is that at the NAMB National event, the event wraps up around 6 o'clock on Monday evening, and you're going to want to make sure you stay all the way through because, it'd be like running, quitting a half mile before the finish line in a marathon. You just ran 26-something miles and you bugged out early, right? Well, this event, this NAMB National Conference, is going to be one of the best conferences and one of the most cost-effective conferences to attend of the entire calendar year of this program. And the reason I know that is because I've had the great privilege and honor of being intimately involved in the planning of the event from the very earliest stages of it, and have worked very closely with the NAMB leadership and the organization talking about the program and what we need to do to create a very powerful experience for the audience. Come on out. You're going to have an opportunity to hang out and network with guys like Rene and Greg Frost and some of the thought leaders in our industry, some of the top-performing originators. And, yeah, you're going to make a little bit of an investment here, guys. But, you're going to spend a couple hundred, $300 for the ticket to attend the event, a couple $100 for the hotel rooms, a couple $100 for the airfare. Probably have $1,200 to $1,500 invested by the time you're all done. But the reality is the value you're going to receive from that, if you got one idea that helps you do one extra loan a month, think about the commissions involved. Your return on your $1,500 investment for doing an additional 10 to 12 loans next year is probably going to be 10 to 12 times return on that $1,500 investment. Because I guarantee you, when we walk you through this process, you're going to leave with a complete action plan, ideas, and emotional fuel to make sure that you implement that plan throughout the entire year of 2014. And the reason I saved Mr. Rene for this particular program is because I know that I'm always kind of a person who's believed in saving the best for last, and I guarantee you guys, make the plans. If you've already planned your flight arrangements and you haven't made the adjustments, go ahead and make them again now. Either catch a later flight, don't leave the Harrah's area until 6 o'clock, book an 8 o'clock or later flight out of Vegas. It works for you if you're on the West Coast and you get home Monday night. If not, just take the extra night. I mean, Monday night rooms in Vegas are stupid cheap. An extra, probably less than $100, you can pick up an extra room to fly out Tuesday morning. Go ahead and make the adjustment to your schedule now and plan on being here with us for that final piece, the Maximum Growth Summit, Planning to Win 2014. And come out and check out what Rene has to share with you about the emotional fuel that you need to execute your plan throughout the year. All right, with that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the program at this point because I think we're just a hair past the hour. I want to thank all of you for investing your time in today's program. There's one final piece that I want to share with you about implementation, but I wanted to give Mr. Rene an opportunity to be able to share any final thoughts here just before we jump off the program for today.
Okay, so yeah, no, I'd say the final thoughts. I did go through and I posted the link to the article that I mentioned, so if everybody wants to make sure they check the chat area. And I responded to a couple questions specifically, so I think it's Caitlin and Simon. You want to make sure you check your chat responses there. But no final questions. I mean, I would love to see everybody there. And again, questions, if you see me there, please stop me. I can't see your faces on this, so I'd just tell me you were on the webinar, and would definitely love to have your feedback, thoughts, questions. I'm a sucker for good conversation, so we'll be around. I'll probably be hanging around Erik's booth a little bit too, and walking around, and looking forward to seeing everybody there.
Awesome. Well, guys, the last thing that I'm going to share with you then, and Rene, I know you've got a very tight schedule, so if you need to go ahead and hop off, feel free. I'll forward you the Q&A log and the follow-up, so if you want to go ahead and tag back some of these questions, I'll get you the information you need to be able to do that if you want to. Anyway, guys, the last thing that I was going to tell you to do is I wouldn't be doing my job as a coach if I didn't help you create an action plan. You've already invested an hour of your time at this point to get the information that Rene has shared with you. But ideas without action are useless, right? They don't have any benefit to you until you do something with those ideas to make them a part of your daily practice. So here's what I want you to do. If you follow this simple 4-step process, you'll walk away from today's call with an action plan. So before you pick up the next phone call, before you look at the next email, I want you to take just 2 to 3 minutes to finish this one last exercise and take the first and most valuable idea and do something with it. So the first question is, what was the most valuable thing you heard Rene share in today's program? What's the one idea you want to implement first? I'll have the webinar recording to refer back to later. It's no big deal. You always come back and pick up idea 2, 3, 5, 8, 10, 20. I know I got 1,000 ideas out of this program today myself, but just pick that one first one that you want to implement right away. Okay? The second question is, what action do you need to personally take to make that a part of your daily business? For example, the article that Rene mentioned talking about Ron Paulson, the world's most successful real estate investor, that article would be maybe a great tool to use as a talking point or as a third-party verification of the information that you're sharing. All right, Kelly's already taking action and posting in the Q&A. I can't applaud you more for that activity. All right, so what action are you going to take to make it part of your daily business? Third action is put a date on it, a target date. Not necessarily a goal that you're going to use to beat yourself up with, but a focus point for creating that deadline, a sense of urgency to get it completed sooner rather than later. So decide, by when are you going to have that action item implemented? And then the fourth action item is, who are you going to ask to hold you accountable? There was another question that I said go back to the slide about the percentage of implementation. It's a study from Brigham Young University in 1998 that talked about the path of percent of chance of change. Okay, so 95% chance of change if you do two things. Set a goal, tell somebody about it, or I guess technically three things. Set a goal, tell somebody about it, ask them to follow up with you. So the last final step of this planning to win process is decide who are you going to ask to hold you accountable. Who is going to be your accountability partner? Whether that's a colleague, a spouse, a friend, a buddy at the office, an external third-party business development partner like a real estate agent, a financial planner, a CPA. Who do you trust enough and believe has authority and information enough to be able to share and guide you down the path to success, and that you trust enough that if you make a promise to them, you're going to stick to that promise and you're going to feel really guilty if you don't. Of course, if you'd like some help with being able to get, find an accountability partner if you don't already have one, we'd love to talk to you about that. The best way to find out more about the value of coaching is to actually experience it. We offer an opportunity for that through one of two ways. One is our strategy session. The other is through a group coaching experience we offer, which the next one of those will be taking place on October 16th at noon Central. You can get registered for that next live interactive group demo called the Maximum Acceleration Experience. If you go to our website, mxlcoach.com/webinars, and check out the registration link for the October 16th Maximum Growth Experience and demo. Otherwise, if you're really serious and you already know you're looking for an accountability partner and you just want the guidance on how to get access to it, go ahead and go to mxlcoach.com/strategy. You can request a no-cost, no-obligation coaching experience. Either that, or you can go ahead and post right now live in the Q&A that you'd like to take advantage of that Q&A. Of course, we only have a handful of them available every week because they're a one-on-one session with one of our full-time coaches. But if you want to go ahead and take advantage of that, if you want to take action right away, go ahead and post the best phone number and email address in the Q&A so that we have the contact information we need to call you and coordinate the scheduling. So just take a couple of seconds, go ahead and pop that into the Q&A. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, you've already pretty well decided that you want to engage a coach of some form or fashion, then go ahead and hop on and take advantage of one of those strategy sessions for you to experience the value of coaching in a one-on-one environment. Otherwise, guys, find that accountability partner, create your action plan, and make a difference in your life. If there's anything else my team or I can do for you, certainly don't hesitate to ask. Just give us a reach out, and we'll be happy to follow up with you on answering any questions or concerns that you have. Otherwise, the other thing that we want to talk to you about a little bit more is, of course, the intended purpose of today's program is make sure that you come on out for the NAMB National Program. It's one of the best opportunities, like I've already said. It's one of the best programs out there to provide it. Like I said, the return on your investment for attending an event of this style, I guarantee you, will be a high profit rate of return, a significant rate of return on your coaching, on your investment for coming out to a live event of this caliber. I know it's going to be one of the best events all year, and I look forward to meeting all of you out there. If you haven't registered yet, just pull the trigger. It will be worth it. I guarantee that you'll walk away with what you need to implement, execute, and perform at a much, much higher level. Otherwise, like I said, if for whatever reason you are not going to be able to attend the event, the last thing I will tell you is available to you is we do have the Maximum Growth Planning to Win process on a home study course DVD program available. If you are interested in taking advantage of that, we are offering an event-only pricing special to people who have attended this webinar that you can take advantage of it instead of the regular $297 value for the home study course, which is a 4.5-hour DVD program and a CD-ROM with all the tools and download resources that you need, including the action planning guide for the event that will walk you through day by, session by session, program by program. Every future conference you attend, you'll be able to use this process to create a personalized action plan for what you learn from that conference and actually make sure it's getting implemented in business. Special event pricing will be extended for anybody who's attended this webinar or comes to the live NAMB event. You'll be able to get that home study course for only $147. Very, very easy and low investment required to be able to get the ideas, tools, and resources that you need to take your business to a radically higher level in a very minimal amount of time. All right, so with that in mind, guys, I thank you for joining us today. If there's anything else my team or I can do for you, please do not hesitate to ask. I'm going to go ahead and jump off the audio of the program here in just a second, but I am going to leave the Q&A open if you guys want to chat. I'll be around just taking care of some back-end stuff here for just a few more minutes. But otherwise, we will be excited to see all of you out at the NAMB National Conference here in just a little over 2 weeks. Go ahead and get your flights booked today before the airfare goes way up. Go ahead and look forward to seeing all of you at the NAMB National Conference. By the way, tickets are available on the nambnational.com website, www.nambnational.com.